This is Outnumbered. Happy Monday, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith, and here today is Harris Faulkner, Andrea Tantaros, Jedediah Bila, and today's hashtag One Lucky Guy. We welcome back former Massachusetts Senator and Fox News contributor Scott Brown, and he is outnumbered and fresh off a triathlon, by the way.
Yes,
wow.
A little sore, a little tight today, but feeling pretty good. It's glad to be back.
You look very fit.
I am fit. I feel very fit.
And tan. I'm jealous.
Tan. Yes, it was 82 degrees out yesterday in the race. Probably got a little sun.
Well, you can tell you've been training, though. You can see it. Yeah.
Lost 40 pounds.
Wow. We can tell.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Really?
Yeah.
You look great.
Can I catch that?
I did it. Yes.
Want to do a triathlon, Harris? Let's do it.
When I look thinner, he touched me.
I was just telling you, Senator Brown, actually, the one time I ran behind him in a race, it was the congressional race along the Potomac, and I was right behind him, and I went out in a 5:40 mile for a 3-mile race, and I was like, I'm going to die. And you took off. You're
I was trying to keep up with Senator Thune, who, without a doubt, is the most in-shape senator or congressman in the entire
I was impressed by so
40
many
pounds. That's a backstreet boy.
I did this Advocare thing, and it was pretty cool. It was pretty easy. So.
Good for you.
We'll get the details after the show.
Details. It was great.
All right, well, great to have you, Senator. Let's get right to it. Stark warnings from the top levels of government on the security of the homeland and the growing terror threat in the United States from ISIS. House Homeland Chair Michael McCaul saying the internet at everyone's fingertips these days is prime recruiting grounds for the jihadists.
We have this phenomenon in the United States where they can be activated by the internet, and really terrorism has gone viral. I think the threat environment today is one of the highest I've ever seen it, and primarily because there are so many failed states out there.
Homeland Security Security Secretary Jay Johnson seems to see the same online perils. He says global terror has entered a new phase of so-called lone wolf attackers who can either be activated or inspired at a moment's notice.
We're very definitely in a new environment because of ISIL's effective use of social media, the internet, which has the ability to reach into the homeland and possibly inspire others. We're very definitely in a new phase in the global terrorist threat, where the so-called lone wolf could strike at any moment.
And as if to underscore the threat to the homeland, in the last hour, we learned that a Virginia woman who tried to help her boyfriend join ISIS got sentenced to almost 5 years in the federal penitentiary. Okay, Senator Brown, what does this talk about, going viral? And Jay Johnson saying we're in this new environment now for terrorists and terrorism. I mean, the internet's been around a long time, but it's specifically this outlet that is social media that they're talking about, Facebook, Twitter, where these terrorists are getting together, or those that are associated with the terrorists are getting together in ways that it's almost impossible to track them down.
Well, first of all, let's start with the fact that the JV team is out there and that Al-Qaeda is on the run. That's what President Obama says, and quite frankly, that's not what's happening. And then you take the social media that you're seeing now, the ability for people to communicate a little bit more discreetly underground, and then move forward in force at times, going and hitting isolated targets here and there. It's scary. Certainly hope it doesn't happen. As Homeland Security, that's one of their biggest jobs, is to protect our country. And as a former ranking member of Homeland Security, it's something that we were concerned about. Want to make sure they have the tools and resources to do their jobs. You look at what Rand Paul is talking about with the fact that you have all this mega data collection. It's a very interesting topic that's really in the forefront.
Well, the administration, Andrea, certainly has been criticized here. House Homeland Security Chair Mike McCaul, you just heard from him. He said this is one of the highest he's ever seen as far as the he was asked to compare the terror threat now to that of 2001, directly following 9/11. He says it's one of the highest he's ever seen. He went on to express his concern over the administration's response to these threat levels, basically saying, look at how much funding they're throwing at climate change compared to homegrown terrorists. Yeah. But he was very critical.
We're laughing, Sandra, but I mean, if you listen to John Kerry, the Secretary of State, I mean, he says this is the biggest issue and the biggest crisis facing us right now is climate change. I think most people would disagree with that. And it is troubling, the money that we're spending on climate change and not spending to get into, as McCall also pointed out, these websites that last week FBI Director Comey said the FBI can't even get to. Right. These ISIS terrorists, who, by the way, you don't have to be radicalized the way that you were in 2011. You can simply wear the jersey. You don't have to be trained in a camp abroad. You can be anywhere. And according to McCall, there's hundreds, maybe thousands already in the United States on these websites, not just Facebook, but on these encrypted websites that we can't get into. And it makes me wonder, I mean, President Obama was called the first tech president. He has great relationships with Silicon Valley. Why not bring in some of these leaders of Facebook and Twitter to figure out how better the government can work with these companies? Because we know, as you just reported, Sandra, they're actively using them, and they're using these sites to plan terror attacks.
That's
Why
right.
can't we shut down their accounts?
So it's important to point out, Twitter does not publish the data related to the accounts that it does suspend, but it's estimated right now, Harris, that Twitter says that there's as many as 90,000 Twitter accounts that support ISIS. Okay, these are according to reports, not Twitter, because again they don't release this information. But Twitter has actively started shutting down many, in cases, thousands of accounts that they believe are tied to ISIS in some ways. 10,000 accounts, in fact, in one day, it was reported early in April.
You know, there are two ways to really look at that, though, because some of the law enforcement that I'm talking with, my sources are telling me, you don't really want to do too much of that. Because, I mean, right now, at least we can track some of these guys. At least we know what they're saying. And with regard to Elton Simpson down in Garland, Texas, the man who was already on the FBI's radar, they weren't checking his Twitter account. And had they been, or if they were missing some stuff. Had they been checking it closer, it was those private Twitter messages. So you got to have a relationship with these telecommunications companies, and you got to leave those accounts open at some point so you can track these guys. He was not only talking back and forth between some of those who were arrested in Minneapolis and San Diego, he was proselytizing. He was recruiting.
Yeah.
He was doing the very thing that won't make you a lone wolf. It makes you a pack of wolves.
And by the way, Simpson announced what he was going to do before he did it.
Yeah. But this whole mentality of a lone wolf, though, is now growing. I'm wondering, Senator, how frustrating is it to know that you worked on Homeland Security and you're watching a new phenomenon now? You had the brothers accused in the Boston Marathon bombing. You've got the two cousins who were picked up in Illinois. No, it's not lone. It's pack of wolves.
Yeah, listen, it's scary. It's a whole new world of terrorism. And people need to be vigilant and diligent when they see something. They need to say something. It sounds like a cliche, but it's so true. And it's sad also, you know, to think that people are actually trying to, you know, hurt and change our way of life. I believe we're the greatest country in the world. I believe we are a country of good, and we have an opportunity to be leaders, and we have people wanting to change that. And it's starting, I think, and it started when you know, we didn't move forward in Syria, quite honestly, and didn't, you know, that line was drawn and we didn't do anything. And as a result, our allies, as I said, don't trust us, and our foes don't fear or respect us. And it's emboldening these criminal and terrorist elements to move forward and be more emboldened, as you referenced.
Senator, what do you think about the battle between those who have privacy concerns, civil liberties concerns, versus those who feel like, you know what, this is a time to have an all-out counterterrorism strategy, and these things need to sort of take a back seat? And I'm wondering if you think those things will play a role in the presidential election.
Of course. I had many conversations with Senator Paul on that very issue, because he's obviously in one side of the spectrum and other senators and other candidates are on the other side. And quite frankly, I think it's a balance. I think we need to not only protect our rights and freedoms to be Americans and have free press and the ability to express ourselves, but we also want to make sure that we have the right to live and not be killed. And we have to strike that balance by protecting those rights, but also making sure we give our law enforcement and others the ability to do their jobs, do them well, and find out what, if anything, is next.
Does it trouble you, though, the amount of information that they're getting through these dragnets? I mean, it makes it harder to target the people they should be targeting when they're targeting everybody, and that's really what's being debated.
Absolutely, and it was never the intent listen, I voted to extend, obviously, the Patriot Act. It was never the intent to have this blanket, massive, you know, gathering of information. It was, you know, based upon going to targeted areas, knowing where these people are, and trying to find out what, if anything's next. So, yeah, I think we can pull it back and still do the job.
You know, one of the things, though, again, with law enforcement I've talked with, one of the reasons why we're seeing a bigger dragnet or a bigger net that has to be cast, it's more, and they're getting better at hiding. Yeah. And so as they talk to each other, you do have to cast a bigger net. So do we Patriot Act or do we not Patriot Act?
Listen to what you just said. They're getting better. there's more of them. How are we not up to speed? We're the United States of America. It's like, how are they using encrypted websites that our own FBI can't get onto? I mean, that is what really frightens me.
Demographics? I mean, are they younger? No, I sincerely mean this. I don't know. I mean, you worked in this. Are we talking about a younger generation?
I'm the oldest one here, so I don't know.
No, I doubt that.
As McCall put it, it's like finding a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
He's projecting it's only going to get worse. Well, it looks like a major snub of President Obama, Saudi Arabia's king, pulling out of this week's White House summit amid growing tensions with Iran. And he's not the only one. What this means for President Obama's foreign policy and whether making peace with Iran is worth ruining the relationship with our allies. And former Florida Governor Jeb Bush tackling the issues in his first TV interview in months. But he still hasn't jumped into the 2016 race. Is the delay helping or hurting him? And right after the show, catch more from the couch on the web. Join us for Outnumbered Overtime by logging on to foxnews.com/outnumbered and click on the Overtime tab. Harris is excited. Tweet us your questions, comments, or tell us what topic you want to hear more about.